right. Well, listen, why don't we just start with a little bit about like your journey, your path, how you got to where you are. What are some of the things that maybe shaped that path for you from your early beginnings? And then, of course, I'd love to talk more about the way you've developed the business, how you've scaled it, dive into the work and the life balance aspect of it. I know that's a big part of sort of the core tenets from looking at, your website and your background.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm Brad. Grew up in small town Kansas. And when I say small town, the opposite of the city where you're at. So Minneapolis, Kansas is my hometown, right in the middle of the state. Population of 2,000. Grew up on a farm. So my dad raised cattle, ran a combine in the summers cutting wheat. So kind of the very stereotypical when you think of Kansas farm boy, that was my upbringing. And really, the path to finance for me, it was kind of a twisty, turny one. Played college athletics, so I was a college football player. That took me to Emporia State, which was a D2 in the middle of the state. Actually, an IT major. My first job right out of college was at the infamous Payless Shoe Source, which no longer exists these days, but their corporate office was in Topeka,
Yeah, I didn't
the
know that.
capital of Kansas, for those that are unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And so did the corporate gig for about 3 years. Had always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit. Was always into finance. I didn't come from much. My family provided for me, but I think part of that, the younger version of me, it was a pursuit of the stuff I didn't have as a kid. And so I remember sitting in my cubicle in Payless Shoe Source, supposed to be coding on the back end of Excel VBA. Instead, I was day trading. It was right around the time where Chipotle IPO'd, Under Armour IPO'd, Google IPO'd. So those were the three big ones, which
Hmm.
if I look back at my early stock picking, those weren't bad ones to pick
Those are
back in those days.
phenomenal. Chipotle, come
And
on.
yeah, so that was kind of my path. And I actually went to a career fair for Payless Shoe Source to recruit new college kids into the corporate office. And I was right next to a booth, a guy that was working for John Hancock. And I just struck up a conversation. And there was just something kind of tugging me into finance. And so that really sent me on a path, study for my CFP while I was working there. And then I convinced my wife that it made sense to quit my pretty well paying corporate job and go be a financial advisor. And so I was on that path. In fact, I had accepted a job at John Hancock. We were going to relocate to Kansas City, bigger market, and talked to one of my old college buddies who's now my co-founder at Triad, Sean Sparks. He had somehow stumbled his way into insurance brokerage and distribution fresh out of college. And so he was kind of pseudo explaining what he did. He's like, yeah, I cold call these financial advisors, convince them to fly into Topeka, Kansas, broker their insurance business through us. And that was really my entry into understanding the world of the FMO space, insurance brokerage. And so I took a pivot. I actually didn't go the financial advisor space and I went into distribution. So our clients were actually financial advisors. And so at the age of 26, started really it was really an internal wholesaler at the time, cold calling, convincing
Yep.
people to fly in, sell our product versus the other guys. But as the industry evolved, two very separate worlds of here's the insurance guys over here selling stuff, here's the wealth management guys over here building financial plans. '07 to when I left my prior role in 2020, those worlds merged. And at the end of the day, the fiduciary approach of when you're dealing with retirees and pre-retirees, it really had started to trend towards what's the best financial tool in the toolbox, and let's make sure we have access to all of them. And the independent advisor space we were serving really followed that path. And where I evolved into more of a coaching role, what I realized is all products are commodities. And so if your value prop is a commoditized product that everybody has, you're just going to be what everybody is, which is a commodity. And so really what we learned is we were really heavy in a direct response space, guys doing a ton of public events, TV, radio, and had gotten really good at it. And they had to because they were selling a product on the insurance side. But what was cool is those worlds merged. That same direct response skill set, it worked so much easier in the wealth management space because it was the same skill set of manufacturing appointments. and growing a business, but now they were just dealing with all of the financial tools versus just a small subset of them. And so by the time I left, many of my clients were capturing hundreds of millions of dollars organically per year. Some of those going into insurance products, much of it going onto the AUM side of the house, the wealth management side. And I'll stop there because I could probably go on, but that was kind of my coming up in the business, learning in the trenches next to advisors when it came to how to market, sales process, operations, building a culture that attracts and keeps great talent, and obviously creating a vision that's going to take the team where they go together. So I'll stop there. Derek,
Yeah.
on your side, you let
I,
me know where else you want to go, but that was my kind of coming up in the business.
so as you built this out, and then you decided obviously to really, scale it up. I mean, what are some of the challenges that process? Do you have to kind of decide on the size of organizations you want to take on and work with? How does it change the way you sort of think about approaching the market?
It's interesting. You just referenced one of the biggest problems I see in finance for financial advisors. And what's interesting is everybody calls himself a financial advisor, but the definition of that is different depending on the organization that you come up in, depending on the products they distribute, depending on the licensing that you hold. But the general population just says, oh, this is my financial advisor. And they don't know any different, right? And so one of the things we started to see a lot of was as these financial advisors start, the ones that had success and started to scale, they actually started to become victims of their own success. Because if you think about no different than an attorney or a doctor or a financial advisor, if the success of your business is built on I and me, then you can only scale to the amount of hours you have in a given week. And so what we started to see is, when you go from 5 million of assets a year to 10, okay, maybe I just double my events I do and I double my appointments and now my calendar is twice as full and I'm good. But at some point, you start to hit burnout. And what I started to see is the people in our industry that were paraded across the stage as the top producer getting the awards, whether that's on the asset management side of the house or the insurance side, they actually were miserable. They had built their own prison around themselves. Yeah, they were getting all the awards, but then you looked at their health, you
Yeah.
looked at their family, you looked at their mental well being, and it was falling apart all the other places. And I think one of the biggest symptoms of that, Derek, is our industry is really good at training financial advisors to sell products or manage assets, but horrible at training them how to run a business. And no different than that doctor that's, running himself ragged or that attorney, the same thing happens in our space all the time. We call it red line behavior. And so one of the biggest ways to get through that is to actually create a completely different focus. I kind of make the comparison. I grew up in the 80s. We all had NES. So it's like, gaming. You pass level 1 on Super Mario Brothers, you're like, I could do this in my sleep. Then you
Right.
get to level like 8 and you're just dying every single time. You're like, what's going on here? Why is this game so hard? That's like the entrepreneurial path in our space where, once advisors kind of figure it out, I know how to run an appointment, I know how to create rapport, I know how to, do some asset allocation to build a decent financial plan. That's level 1. Level 2 gets much more difficult, which is not about I and me. It's about we, it's about team, it's about developing and growing leaders, it's about building divisions like a real business does, a marketing division that creates the appointments, a sales or, conversion. Most people would call that a sales division that, you know, transfers them from prospect to client, operations that fulfills all the promises you make. And most advisors that are good at sales are horrible at operations, and most will admit that. And so now you have to hire your complements, your differences are your strengths. You have to start to build a vision so that there's alignment as the team grows. You have to have a culture that attracts and keeps great talent that doesn't sound like everybody else. And then you have to develop leadership, which is a very, very different skill set that a lot of firms struggle with. I mean, financial services has one of the highest turnover rates of any industry because most people are sales guys or girls running around making sales, but not leading a team. And so that was the thing we started seeing a lot where firms were starting to hit that glass ceiling
Yeah.
because a different skill set was needed to shift to a business owner and a CEO versus just thinking like a financial advisor. So that's one of the problems we help fix a ton.
So would you say that is the number one reason? Like there's only typically in any industry, right? The 80-20 rule. At 20%, what gets them there and what keeps the 80%? Is it, would you say the biggest thing that you've experienced in doing this through your career is that inability to scale the infrastructure of that advisor, being able to like you said, you can have a vision, but executing on it, so you got to hire the right people to help you do that. But also, you've got to be able to see beyond the day to day and know how to lead and create the right divisions, as you said, the right teams within the infrastructure. Like that is a totally different skill set, and not a lot, right? That's why there's some CEOs who get 140 million a year, right?
Yeah.
And there's only a few of them.
Yep.
It's people think they're overpaid, but it's an insanely incredible skill to run JP Morgan, right?
Mhm.
To run a big organization. And you're just obviously it's on a smaller level, but to run your own team and do that. I mean, if you think about your all your experiences, would you say that's the biggest thing that you need that most that's the gap that you need to fill?
I think from my experience, so I've been coaching in some form in finance for close to 2 decades now. So, and I've run a podcast that has attracted a lot of different types of advisors, straight up wealth management, fee only sort of guys, billion plus under management, insurance only guys that are selling products at a high level and everything in between. The common theme that gets in the way a lot, I think if I ask the question to a room full of financial advisors that are actually care about their business and want to serve their clients and want to have some level of success in life, if I said, hey, who in here, raise your hand, wants to be a great business owner and a great CEO for your firm? I think 100% of the hands would go up from my experience. Now, back to the 80-20 rule that you just mentioned, Derek. It's one thing to say you want to do something. Guess what? I wanted to be an NFL football player. But if I'm realistic with myself, granted, some of that's DNA, but a lot of it is hard work and dedication and putting in all the hours when people aren't looking. And if I'm honest with myself, I probably didn't go to the level I would have had to if I even wanted to have a slight chance to be that, right?
Right.
Same thing applies in our business. Everybody says they want to do it. Many, unfortunately, don't follow through with the commitment, the hard work, the commitment to growth and leveling up in order to be the leader that that's going to take. Because nobody really wants a boss, let's be honest. Everybody wants a leader. A boss says, here's what to do and micromanages.
Right.
A leader says, here's where we're going, follow me.
Right.
And
Inspires.
yeah, to your point, like a great CEO, in my opinion, there's two things you can't delegate: vision and inspiration. And here's where we're going, and here's why you should come with me. And that is a very different skill set from being a great financial advisor.
Yeah.
And so I think, but that is also what's getting in the way of great financial advisors creating freedom to where the entire business does not rest on their shoulders, and making sure when they go on vacation, the revenue doesn't go on vacation. You know, if you
Right.
do it right, you can actually build a business that produces when you're not there. You're not required to show up. We call kind of the 4 tracks where most advisors we meet them at, we call it the advisor in charge.
Mhm.
Everything they delegate, but then all the questions come back and they're like, hey, well, what about this? What about that? So they're in the middle of the circle with all the fingers pointing back and coming back to them. Level 2 is a business owner, which starts to create divisions, marketing, sales, ops, starts to delegate, build a team. Level 3 is a CEO that now has a C suite surrounding them, where they've actually not only delegated the responsibility as a business owner, they've delegated the thinking to where now their CMO is coming to them with the marketing ideas the business should run with versus them having to generate them and send them downhill. And then level 4, that I would say the vast majority of financial advisors don't reach, is board member, where you're a shareholder and you're not required to show up to the office for it to create revenue for you. And so the cool thing is, I will tell you, with the proper blueprint and the proper willingness to put in the work and learn and grow, I will say every financial advisor that wants to be can be a business owner, but the rules change. Back to the video game analogy, the rules change. You went from level 1 to level 8. So you got to be committed to putting, learning differently and changing your behaviors to get there.
but it's there, it's available. It's not
Oh yeah,
like as Brad Johnson maybe didn't have the genetics to be an NFL player, but if he had had the work ethic or what not work ethic, but the desire to put in the time, it's available. In this business, it's not about your DNA. You're basically saying from all the people that you've dealt with in the industry, you know who advisors are. They all can do it. It's
for
just a
sure.
matter of whether they want to put it in. But there's not
This
some special DNA they need. You know,
That's
I
the difference,
yeah,
Derek. The difference between an NFL professional football player
right.
and a professional business owner is you don't actually have to be born with the DNA to get there. It's coachable, it's teachable. If you're willing to be a humble student and put in the work, anyone can get there. Now, some others might get there a little quicker because maybe some of it's a little more natural to them, but
Hmm.
anyone can do it because there is absolutely a blueprint to get you there.
Yeah, I mean that has to be so inspiring to all the listeners out there. I mean, I obviously we cover a lot of RIA firms, small, mid to large, and they're business owners, and they're all looking to scale at some point, and monetize that, that success. So to know that that's out there. You mentioned one, I think level three you were talking about, which really plays back to culture and having people start bringing you ideas as opposed to you having to pump it all out. How important is that? Like, how you help them to understand what's the culture you want to build? How do you want to develop it? How do you want to sustain it? How does it show through to your clients? I mean, I interview tons of people heading up a sales team, and it's like one of the first questions they always ask. It's one, okay, if I'm interviewing for an internal wholesaling job, the first question I'll get from a candidate is like, what do I have to do to stand out? What are the things the people who got out into the field did, right? And then it's, what's the culture like here? Like it's
Mhm.
always that. I assume that's a big piece of your coaching and what you help develop for folks.
Yeah, you know what's wild? I don't think I truly understood this. I was an entrepreneur. I had a small sales team I built in my first 13 years in finance. And I was like, oh, this building a bit. I mean, I coached entrepreneurs for 13 years. I'm like, this can't be that hard to be one, right? I'll just follow the same playbook. But I will say, I have a ton more empathy these days as an entrepreneur coming up on 5 years in November. Um, it's much easier to coach being an entrepreneur than it is to actually be one.
Yeah.
And because the buck stops with you no matter what. Personnel issue, it's on your plate. Internet goes down, it's on your plate. Like all of these things hit you that you're not ready for. And I think as you grow as an entrepreneur, at first they completely blindside you. And then you just start to realize, oh, I'm just playing a new game. This is part of it. And we have a saying at Triad, which I think hopefully should hit with your audience. Leaders are calm and confident. So if I was just going to give simple leadership advice, calm and confident. So you get hit with the fire of the day. Guess what happens if you blow up? Oh, lose your mind. You're emotional. Nobody wants to follow a volatile emotional leader. It's like go follow that guy. He can't even hold his stuff together, right? And so which takes work, trust me, I've been guilty of that on many days, but you almost have to have an inner calmness and back to inspiration that comes with confidence of, hey guys, we'll handle this, we got this, we'll get through this. And if I just look at sports, we made the analogy a little bit. Now I don't know if you're a New York sports fan. I know you're in New York. I'm a
No,
Chiefs
no. I
fan.
grew up in New England, and
Okay, well, hey,
I
you
married a
guys had a
Philly
good
fan.
run then. You
Yeah,
had a
we had a
good
great
run.
run. We had a 20-year beautiful run. So no, we've had a lot of fun there.
Well, I will say now I understand the hate you guys used to get all the time because as a Chiefs fan, I'm like, I've been a Chiefs fan, by the way, before it was cool to be one or not cool to be one, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
And now that we put together a few wins, everybody loves the underdog and points the finger at the winner that they're cheating somehow. So, but what I will say, a lesson you can learn from both organizations, the Patriots and the Chiefs, how you develop a winning culture as an organization. It doesn't just start with throwing random players on the field and hoping it works out. I will say both of those organizations, when they at the peak, had a true vision to what does this organization want to be, who are the players that fit this mold and the players that do not fit this mold, and what is the requirement to not only get on the field but stay on the field. And I think as a business, you can learn a lot from that because unfortunately, and we've been guilty at Triad, the early days, you're like, shoot, we need help. Who's the random person we can find to throw into this role? We had a very unintentional hiring process. And I think most firms, especially when they're smaller, it's the advisor in charge model is, hey, here's a random fire of the day. Let's find a random person to take care of it. There's no career track. There's no job description. There's no hiring process. And that is an absolute recipe for disaster. And a very you have a culture. The question is it one of intention or one by accident? And a lot of firms, when they start out, that's one of the biggest things we fix. We do what's called a team intensive, where we fly not only the founder in, but their entire team. Because you can't build an organization bigger than you by yourself. You have to bring the team along. And if they're not in the conversation, how the heck do you bring them along for the ride? And so when we bring teams in, oftentimes we'll have team members that have been on the team 5 years, 10 years. They're wearing like four different hats, and it just depends on the day. And
Yeah,
so you can't, that'd be like Patrick Mahomes, your quarterback today, your receiver tomorrow, and your, left tackle next week. You'd be like, what is this coach thinking? But we do it all the time in finance. And so back to vision and then creating a culture that attracts and keeps great talent, you have to start thinking like a business owner. If you don't have an org chart, imagine a football team without a roster of positions. Like
can't do
it's
it.
kind of it's basic 101, but I also get you're so busy and you've got all these
That's it.
clients with needs, it's hard. So oftentimes one of the biggest breakthroughs, number one, if you don't have an EA that controls your time, that's a huge miss. That's one of the most underrepresented roles in all of finance. So an executive assistant to help control the founder's time. If you don't control your time, somebody else does. Number two, somebody to own operations. It is almost never a founder. Typically, some of the biggest issues I see is when the founder is also the ops person. So some of the biggest breakthroughs are hiring true professional director of ops that can grow into COOs depending on the size of the firm. But a true operations person that treats the team as their clients versus the clients as the clients, because that's what it takes. It takes a world-class team to create a world-class organization. So
I,
what are your
I
thoughts
that
there?
so resonates because I think that, and I hear this all the time with RAs. It's like I can't get everything I need to get done. I have so much everyday stuff. And then it's like all the things that we talk about. Well, we're going to bring this in, we're going to bring that on. We need to create this. Our website stinks. So this isn't
Mhm.
right. All these things are like these projects on a spreadsheet, but they never get to them
Yep.
because they're constantly just dealing with the now, and all these things just slip through the cracks, and it's like quicksand. You keep sinking the more you are trying to gather it all in your arms. And I think that I hear that all the time, and I see it. My wife's an entrepreneur and a business owner in the fitness industry. um, your ability to help people with that. So let's talk about this. So I want to shift gears a little bit because the work-life balance thing is fascinating, because this is the culture in this country has kind of changed. We went into this kind of YOLO thing, right? And
Hmm.
everybody's very much, at least with the Z's and the millennials, I guess to some extent, are it's more about quality of life and less about running on the hamster wheel. But as an entrepreneur, you really don't have that luxury, as you know. How do you do it? What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I know that's part of how you help coach people, right?
Yeah. So this is core, like back to vision.
Hmm.
As Triad, as Sean and I, left a prior chapter that was definitely a blessing on both of our lives. Both of us small town Kansas kids that just really blessed beyond belief in this space. And you've been in finance. It's a beautiful industry. It's a relationship business. I mean, I would never want to do anything else. But I will say, when I started in this industry, I was married. I had no kids. I was 26. And by 2020, where I left my prior role, and then we started Triad at the end of 2020, I had three kids. And that organization had grown from me being the 12th team member to over 1,000 team members, one of the largest insurance brokerage firms in the country, clients that were capturing 200, 300, 400 million organically on an annual basis between insurance and AUM. And what started to happen, which I think can happen with a lot of companies, is there was just more events, more trainings. And when COVID hit, which I know put a scratch in everybody's record. Um, I think before that happened, I was supposed to be on the road somewhere between 75 and 80 nights that year, whether it was trainings at our home office or trainings on the road. And I remember it kind of been building inside of me is like, is this my definition of success? But COVID really like just allowed things to stop for all of us. And it's like, it was almost like a reevaluation time period for many people. And I know they call it the great resignation now, which it ended up being for me. And I remember like, what is success? Is success making a lot of money and missing all the kids' ball games and family dinners and the time I can never be back, buy back down the road? I mean, at the time, my oldest was 10 years old. And as I really got real with myself, what did it for me, Derek, and I know everybody's different, we had this little poster on the wall and it was said what it means to be a Johnson kid. And they were little like sayings and mantras I kind of really wanted to infuse into my kids. And one of them was Johnsons get uncomfortable and do hard things. That's where the growth happens. And I remember I'm sitting there asking my kids to pick one off the poster, and every once in a while I'd pick a different one if they'd repeat them. And I'm trying to infuse this into them, and then I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, man, I'm not living. I'm comfortable. I'm
Right.
not living my truth because it's scary to leave I heard once the paycheck is the most addictive. A biweekly paycheck's the most addictive drug in the world, and the truth is, it is. It's scary to walk away and become an entrepreneur. But what I started to see was a lot of people feeling what I was feeling, where they were sacrificing the stuff that mattered most for more business, more revenue, to walk across the stage to get that 30 seconds of recognition. At the end of the day, they'd look themselves in the mirror and they were exhausted. And so do business, do life for us, it actually holds two meanings. Number one is build a business that blesses your life, that doesn't become your life. That's any entrepreneur, if you ask them why they started their business in the first place, they're like, I had a vision and a dream to do it differently. And I can tell you it wasn't to give up all the stuff that mattered just to make money. It was, I want to build something that serves me and my team. And oftentimes what happens unintentionally is you like look up 5, 10 years later and you accidentally build a prison around yourself and you didn't realize it as an entrepreneur. The second piece of it was I didn't want to create relationships that were transactional. And at Triad, we want to do business with people we actually want to do life with. So that's a very different filter because most of our industry looks at what's the block of AUM you're going to move over, what's the annual production and revenue you're going to bring in, and that's all that matters. And it's just like, yeah, I do some business with some people I probably wouldn't invite over to the family dinner table, but we make a pretty good living off of them annually, and I just put up with it. And I'd been in this business long enough that I said, I don't want to do that anymore. If I wouldn't have them over to the family dinner table and break bread, then why would I do business with them? If I wouldn't want to surround my kids and my team and my family with them, let's not do transactions. Let's do meaningful relationships to where we want to do life together as well. And what's cool is we just got back from Maui. Actually, this is my first day back in the office, and we had close to 80 of our members, so 80 of our firms that we serve nationwide. We had probably as many kids there as we did adults. We had a Switchfoot concert. We were all jamming out. They threw me on the tambourine. I have no idea why, but I, held a beat together for at least a song. But it was just magical. Like I saw kids connecting, I saw families connecting. And guess what? That was like our representation of doing business, doing life. We had Daniel Crosby out. He spoke on behavioral
Nice.
finance. And so it was business with life integrated, not the tug of war, one or the other. And that's the mission we're on at Triad.
Do you think you have been given that innate ability to have enough fearlessness to take a chance and leave a corporate job and become an entrepreneur and take yourself off the addiction of the biweekly paycheck? Or is that something that you had to learn, like to have that kind of internal fortitude? And is it something you can teach people?
You know, that is a great question. I've thought about it a lot over the last 5 years. I think most entrepreneurs, if they're honest with you, when you ask them a question like that, there's a certain level of abundance of glass half full mindset to where they're like, this will work. This will work out. It's almost this passion behind the vision that you have in your head. And I will tell you a little bit of being completely naive to what it's going to take. And I will tell you, like that honeymoon phase, the first day you walk in the office, you're like, we're going to kick the world's butt and we're going to have an awesome team that comes with me. It's like that Jerry Maguire moment, who's coming with me, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think every entrepreneur, when they're in that kind of first month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months of their business, that's like how they attack it. And then reality sets in. And like, there's definitely a stage where you're like, oh my God, what did I do? Why did I leave that certainty for this? That first curveball, that first fire that pops up, the first person that quits that you didn't see coming. And that's when some people throw in the towel. And I will say, to me and my business partner, Sean, it helped me to have a business partner, because I had somebody like on those rough days, I could be like, dude, like, what's going on here? And we could, have a brotherhood there. But I think once you settle into entrepreneurship, instead of the roller coaster whipping you around, you start to realize, oh, okay, this is that climb. Everything feels nice and safe. But guess what? Tomorrow, there's probably going to be a big drop, and you just don't know when it's coming. And so it's almost this stoic principle that I read years back, where it's like, I think it was Epictetus, maybe Seneca, had like this prized cup. And most people, when it breaks, they just are, oh my gosh, I lost my prize cup, and they're beside themselves. And it's this mental principle of the cup is already broken. And I think as an entrepreneur, the cup has already broken. If you don't have a personnel issue today, even if you have the world's best culture, you will tomorrow. Just part of the game you signed up to play. And I think once you settle in as an entrepreneur, it starts to stop blindsiding you as much. And you start to say, okay, I've dealt with this before. Here's the system. Here's the process. We're going to make sure no division is, hostage to one team member. We're going to build out a team. We're going to have cross training. We're going to have a true org chart. And then you can kind of start to outgrow some of those problems, but you have to grow as an entrepreneur to get there, because otherwise it'll eat you alive. And so that's like the best, most honest answer I can give you, Derek. And I don't know if that's a good one, but that's been my version of it.
If it's honest, it's always good. One last thing before we wrap. Just for advisors, is there any one thing that they could do like this week to move towards greater growth, greater freedom in their business and their life? Is there any one thing that you would just give as kind of a little morsel?
Yeah, it's simple. And I think it applies whether you've got a team of one, two, three, or 10 or 20 or more. Um, get very intentional with the language and the words you use, which seems like just like a what? And here's what I mean by that. If you're a leader, your whisper is a shout, whether you know it or not. When you're the founder and you have the founder title, and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this and maybe that. Like, I've had team members that went off and ran with the project, and I was just talking out loud,
That's such a good point. That is
and
a good
and
point. Yeah.
it's because your whisper is a shout.
Mhm.
You hold a role in that organization, that the littlest thing you say will be remembered. And if you're not true to that, you will lose trust. If you are true to that, you will gain trust, and you will gain people who are like, I can count when Brad says something, he means it and he's going to follow through. It's just trust 101. It's any relationship, whether it's a spouse at home or your team at work. And so when you start to think about everything I say matters, then you start to choose your words more intentionally. And if you don't want to be a team of one where every client says, hey, I need to talk to Brad. Oh, hey, I need to talk to Brad. You can make some very simple language changes. You can say, yeah, when you meet with our team, and let me introduce you to Joe over here. He's another advisor on the team. We take a team based approach. We're going to build this together. We don't want you to ever be dependent on one person. If I'm out of the office, I'm on vacation. So, just with that little tweak, you now have taken the weight solo off of your shoulders, team based approach, we, us. And you have started to build something bigger than yourself simply by saying it. Advisors that give seminars, I see this all the time, public presentations, whether educational, dinner. When you come in and see me, boom, they just tied all future appointments to them. When you come in and meet with our team, we have highly qualified advisors on our staff. And part of that is an ego thing, Derek. Like part of it is I want to be important. I want it to be about me. I'm the best. And a lot of founders have to outgrow that if they want to build an organization bigger than themselves. And so that would be my advice. Be very intentional with the language you use and make sure that language you're using represents where you want to go and what you want to build.
Sage advice, Brad. Well, this has been great. I just super enjoyed having you on the show, and would love to have you back sometime in the future. And good luck with the rest of the year.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure. I don't take it for granted when I get to share somebody's audience. So hopefully this served them.
This video is for informational purposes only and should not be considered or relied upon as investment advice. It may not be copied, quoted, or referenced without Scion Investment's prior written consent. Do not rely upon any opinions, predictions, or forward-looking statements contained herein. The views expressed do not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation to purchase securities, nor do they constitute the endorsement of a particular asset class or investment strategy. Neither Scion Investments nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries warrant its completeness or accuracy. Certain information contained in this video may constitute forward-looking statements that may be inherently unreliable, and actual events or results may differ materially from those reflected or contemplated herein. Scion Investments expressly disclaims any obligation or undertaking to update or revise any information included herein. The views expressed by the guests or participants are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Scion Investments, LLC, or any of its subsidiaries, officers, or staff. Please be aware of the real risk of loss in following any investment strategy. No investment strategy or asset class referenced herein is intended to be construed as investment advice. You should make an independent, informed decision regarding any investments or strategies only after reviewing all relevant offering or disclosure documentation with your financial professional, and after considering your objectives, risk tolerance, and best interest before making any investment in any financial product. Registered personnel should review any business development initiatives addressed herein with their respective compliance and legal departments. Coverage of such topics should not be construed as compliance or legal advice. It is at the discretion of each respective firm if such practices are consistent with firm policies and procedures.